Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes Tottenham blog and to another episode of Transfer Talk. Today there's kind of a lot of news to go through that we've heard throughout the last week, and I'm going to try and get through of it, as much of it as I possibly can. So the main bit to start really is Paulo Dybala. I'm also going to be going in a bit to Christian Eriksen, Giovani Lo Celso, Ryan Sessegnon, kind of what's going on with the right back spot at the moment, and at the end I'm going to talk a bit as well about Kieran Trippier, Toby Alderweireld, David Neres, and the situation with Gareth Bale at the moment. And I know he's not target for Tottenham and he won't be joining, but I do think it is something that is of interest to Tottenham fans, so I will talk about that as well. Now, for those of you who are watching on the live stream replay, I'm going to leave links down in the description to a Facebook group that I'm running at the moment. I'm also going to have a link to, or the code for a fantasy football league that I'm running for Tottenham fans, so if you want to go down and join that, and invite any of your Spurs supporting friends or family to join that as well. I'm also going to be doing a giveaway hopefully in the next couple of weeks when I reach 1,000 subscribers. So what I'm going to do is when I do reach that milestone, I'm at about 880 now, I'm going to put out a video letting you know how you can win a free home jersey for the upcoming season with the name and number on the back and everything like that. So if you do want to share my videos on my channel, and hopefully we can get to 1,000 as soon as possible, maybe before the season starts, and someone can win that jersey sooner rather than later. So just while I'm waiting for a few more viewers to come in here, just going to remind you, I'm going to be talking about Paulo Dybala, Christian Eriksen, Giovani Lo Celso, Ryan Sessegnon, the right back spot, the comments from Kieran Trippier in the last couple of days, Toby Alderweireld, Neres and Gareth Bale. And also, if you want, put your questions or comments or anything like that in the live chat, and I'll get through as many of those as I possibly can. So you've Riley Melman just joining the chat here. Let's see now if we can get a few more people in. If you have any questions as well, just leave them in the chat as soon as you possibly can, and we'll get through those as well. So to start, the big news that we have at the moment is Paulo Dybala. So we've been linked with him a lot. Hey Ratty Star just joining the live chat here. We've heard a lot about Paulo Dybala in the last couple of days. I think it was Thursday the news kind of broke that we were interested in the player. There was a lot of kind of doubt around it, and it was never something that we were fully expecting to happen, but it was Football.London who first broke this news, and it was Alistair Gold specifically. That kind of excited me a bit because he's the one who broke the Kieran Trippier news as well, and he is someone that has been fairly reliable for Tottenham over the last few years. Now Sky Sports also cleared that up as soon as they possibly could, said that Tottenham were in initial talks with the club and that it was something that all parties were interested in. Now the latest that we've heard on this was last night. Sky Sports said that Tottenham are pursuing that deal, but it depends on the departures of Christian Eriksen and Danny Rose. Now there's a lot of thoughts about that Rose or Eriksen could be involved in a swap deal with Juventus to sign Paulo Dybala, but that is looking unlikely at the moment. Now as for Christian Eriksen, hi Ben S joining the chat here. As for Christian Eriksen, Juventus were interested in the player earlier in the window, and it was something that Eriksen said he wanted to move on to a bigger club and make a step up in his career, so it did seem like something that was realistic. However, Juventus now seem to have turned their attentions towards Paul Pogba, and he's their number one midfield target. So I think a swap deal there isn't the most likely thing. And as for Danny Rose, Juventus are also interested in him. Sky Sports are claiming that if Juventus complete a deal for Danny Rose worth in around £25 million, Tottenham will have a sort of agreement in that contract that Juventus will then knock a bit off the price of Paulo Dybala. So I think that may possibly be the best thing at the moment if that deal is going to happen for Tottenham, because kind of kill two birds there. We get Danny Rose out. He's not someone who wants to leave the club, but of course he's left out of the pre-season tour to pursue a move away from the club, so that could be a good thing to get done there. And obviously we were told even at the start of the window any signings would depend on departures. Now, the latest with Dybala is that Juventus are preparing an offer to Manchester United for Romelu Lukaku, and they're willing to include Paulo Dybala in that deal. This kind of knocked a lot of us when that came out last night, and any kind of hope of that deal being completed was immediately crushed, because you'd have to assume that from the player's point of view, United is a much more attractive team for him to join, even though they are, of course, in the Europa League, we're in the Champions League, and we're in the last couple of years have been a better team, but it's just kind of the name of the club, I suppose, and the money that they'll be offering, it is more attractive to him. So that is a bit disappointing. I did kind of think that because Juventus were preparing this offer and it was something that would probably happen, I would have thought that Paulo Dybala would have expressed his interest in that move, which is why Juventus would have pursued that idea. But Sky Sports' Paul Gilmore is saying that Paulo Dybala hasn't yet made his feelings known about this deal. Football.London are claiming that he is interested in a move to Tottenham. So now with this news that perhaps he mightn't be as interested in the Manchester United move, I think there might still be a bit of hope there. But again, I'm not getting my hopes up too much. £80 million is a lot to spend on a player, especially after he broke our transfer record, signing Ndombele for £65 million. It's a whole lot of money, and it's kind of hard to see where it would come from when you look at kind of what has been spent from the club in the last couple of years. Now Ben S is asking, any news on Lo Celso? I haven't heard anything. There's nothing new at the moment really. There's still these rumours floating around the place that the clubs are close to agreeing a deal, the player will be having a medical, and all these things that not really from reliable sources or anything like that. So I suppose the latest we can really discuss is that Real Betis have signed a potential replacement for Giovani Lo Celso in Nabil Fekir. They completed that deal, signing him from Lyon for £17 million, with add-ons rising up to £27 million. That was kind of something we were looking out for, because it was when the first kind of rumours with Lo Celso to Tottenham came to the surface. They identified Nabil Fekir as a replacement very early on. So when that deal was completed, we obviously took that very well, and we're a bit excited about it now. Giovani Lo Celso has also been left out of Real Betis' pre-season squad. They're on a tour in Mexico at the moment. That's not believed to be linked to any transfer activity. He did have international commitments playing with Argentina in the Copa America, so that's not really believed to be related to any transfer activity. Now, having said that, it does feel like a deal that will be completed before the end of the window. There's 12 days left in the window, and Tottenham historically have completed a lot of deals later on in the window. Daniel Levy liking to knock a couple of million off the price, happily holding out to the last few days to complete that deal. That's not something that Pochettino is a fan of, but as he said throughout his time in Singapore and Shanghai, he's not in control of the transfers, and any questions about that, any information about transfers would have to come directly from Daniel Levy, and he's not involved in that side of things. So I'm confident that this one will go through. The odds at the moment on Sky Bet are 1 to 20 for him to join, which is almost as good as you're going to get in terms of how likely it is to happen. Now, as for the transfer fee, there is an £88 million release clause in Lo Celso's contract. Betis earlier in the window were looking for about £70 million, but as I said in my last few live streams, there are a number of clauses in Lo Celso's contract that would kind of put the transfer fee down a lot. So at the moment, I'd be expecting to see a fee in and around £50 million. The main clause within that contract is that if Betis reject an offer worth more than double what they signed him for, which would be about £44 million, maybe adding an extra couple of million to play safe with add-ons and stuff like that, they would have to increase Giovani Lo Celso's wages. And because of their current financial position, having missed out in European football and the signings they've already made this window, it doesn't look like something they would be able to do. So an offer for about £50 million should actually be enough to pry him away from Real Betis. But at this stage, it's just a matter of if Daniel Levy will actually be willing to pay that much. And personally, I hope and expect that he will want to pay that much money, because he's obviously someone Pochettino has identified as a prime target in this window, and he's a player who has shown a lot of quality, and he does have that experience playing at a high level. He's played, of course, with PSG in the French League and in the Champions League, and he's had a bit of Europa League experience even with Real Betis last season. So he's a player that I'd love to see him into the club, and I hope Daniel Levy will just get to work now and get that deal over the line. There's another bit of news coming from Sky Sports in the last 24 hours that Christian Eriksen is now expected to sign a new contract at Tottenham, and this is a massive turn of events. We all heard those comments earlier in the window when he was in the Danish training camp for the European qualifiers. He said that he was actively looking into completing a move away from the club. He wanted a new challenge, and he was looking to make a step up. But it looks like now he has had a complete change of mind, and he's set to sign a new contract with the club. We first heard this maybe last week, that Tottenham had offered him a new contract. It is believed that contract is worth £200,000 a week, which would make him the highest paid player at the club, along with Harry Kane. So it's really exciting news that it does look like he's going to sign a new contract. First looking at that, it does feel like he may have decided, look, this is the place he wants to be. Of course, it was his own personal decision to go on the pre-season tour, which is very encouraging. He had a surgery after the Champions League final, and the medical staff advised him to stay at home. But he personally decided to go on that pre-season tour, and he was training alone, and he only actually played half an hour of that game against Manchester United and didn't feature at all against Juventus. So it's very encouraging that he did actually make that decision. There are some sources claiming that this new contract could potentially be way just to add a bit of value to him, and we'd sell him on in January or next summer for more than the £80 million we'd be expecting at this current time. Of course, there's only 1 year left on his contract, and if he doesn't sign come January, he can negotiate a pre-contract with any European club under the Bosman ruling. So I think it's really important that we get this sorted out this summer. Either way, if we're going to sell him or if we're going to get him to sign a new contract, even if it is just to add value in the future, it's obviously better than letting him go for free next summer. So it's very encouraging news about Christian Eriksen, and I can't wait to see that famous picture of Pochettino with his arm around his shoulder and Eriksen signing that new £200,000 a week contract. Joshua Humphreys here is asking Dybala or Eriksen. That's a really, really difficult one to answer, but I think because Eriksen is already at the club, you'd kind of have to go with him, because financially, obviously Paulo Dybala would be a much more difficult player to have at the club. So I think at the moment we would just have to say Christian Eriksen, not based on quality, but based on I suppose how beneficial it would be to the club and how maybe realistic it is. Matthew Arnold is saying, is it just me, but am I the only one getting bored of our transfer activity? We just seem to take forever. I can see it now. August 8th we tried to sign players, but it just didn't happen. That has been the story of our transfer windows for quite a while now. But you also have to take into consideration that we haven't before made a signing as big as Ndombele that early in the window. So there does seem to be a bit of a change in the transfer strategy there from Daniel Levy, and it is something he has to do because of he 100% needs to keep Mauricio Pochettino at this club, and the best way to do that seems to be bringing in these transfers. And Levy has said, he was at the press conference after he announced that new kit deal with AIA, he was saying that in terms of where he's going to invest financially in the club at the moment, the training facilities are done, the stadium is done. The only next place for him to actually push on and invest in the club is in the squad. And while he did say he doesn't feel under pressure to make those signings, it's really encouraging that he has said that's where he now needs to invest in the squad, and that's where he's willing to invest. So I think we will make another couple of signings this window. I think we have to make another couple of signings. As I said, Ryan Sessegnon and Giovani Lo Celso seem to be done deals, and they will be confirmed in the next week or so. So I don't think they will be kept out until the 8th of August. But this Dybala one is definitely one we need to keep an eye on, because he hasn't expressed an interest in joining United. I'm not saying it's realistic, and I'm not saying I expect it to happen, but it is something that could be just bubbling under the surface there. And because we have actually made contact with the club, and according to Football.London we have made an initial offer, and even though that was turned down, you always see these things with Tottenham that we're linked to these players that you'd expect to be a bit out of our price range and maybe wouldn't be interested in joining Tottenham. But the fact now that there is one of these players that we are actually making steps towards signing, even though it hasn't progressed much at all, it's nowhere near the advanced talks that we'd want. The fact that the club are actually making steps toward that is really encouraging, and I think that is something we have to keep an eye on. Now, Shamir Jalani saying, what fullbacks are we going to sign because Sessegnon can't start yet? Well, there actually is a bit of news again from Sky Sports about our right back situation at the moment, and it is believed Tottenham are not looking into signing a right back this window, and that's something that worries me a lot. Of course, I've said throughout the window that I do think we need to sign a right back, and that was even before Kieran Trippier left the club, because our choices there last season was probably our weakest spot in the team, and now having sold Kieran Trippier, who, even though it was a poor season for him, was definitely our best option in that position, I do feel as though we desperately need to sign a right back. But Pochettino is not interested in that this window, and he's looking to give a lot more game time to the likes of Juan Foyth and Kyle Walker-Peters throughout the next season. So that would kind of suggest that Serge Aurier is going to be the main starting right back in the team. Now, the right back that we were linked with earlier in the window was a 29-year-old Marseille right back, Hiraki Sakai. He's a Japanese international, and he was kind of identified as a fallback option for the club if they didn't sign a right back that fit into that demographic of players that Pochettino was looking for. So the fact now that that deal never progressed, but it was always expected to be a thing that we'd visit later in the window if we hadn't signed, as I said, a right back under the age of 23, an exciting kind of prospect for the future. But it looks now like that Hiraki Sakai thing now is completely off the table, and Pochettino is happy with the choices that he has at right back at the moment. And I don't think that is something that the fans agree with. I do think the majority of us feel that we do need to sign a right back. And looking at the choices that we have there at the moment, Serge Aurier was a big signing when he came in from PSG. We were happy to get him for in between 20-30 million pounds, but he hasn't quite made the impact that we would have expected from him. A player coming from a background where he's won a lot of trophies, he's played a lot of football at a high level, and he just never really pushed on at the club. He's been disappointing, he's been rash, he's just hasn't been the player we were expecting, and he doesn't seem like a player, a suitable first choice for right back, because in our team it's such an important position. Like the two fullbacks, they're players that we rely on a lot defensively and going forward as well. And looking at that system we kind of played against Manchester United, when we had the diamond in midfield with Winks and Dembele and Sissoko, and then all of a sudden it was one behind two strikers instead of three players behind one striker, and that took a lot of width away from our team, and it put so much emphasis on the fullbacks. And in that game it was predominantly Anthony Giorgio and Kyle Walker-Peters who were sort of in that position where they needed to impact the game, and they certainly weren't at a level where they could do that. And I just don't know if Aurier is at that level either. And our other two choices, Juan Foyth and Kyle Walker-Peters, because Pochettino seems to think that he's aiming to give them more game time, that would kind of suggest to me that they're not first choices, and he will rotate with them as much as he possibly can. And whether that means like midweek league games or domestic cup games or what, it just doesn't feel like they're going to be the starting choices. As for left back, Ryan Sessegnon does seem to be the player that we're going to be bringing in. Danny Rose's future at the moment is in complete doubt. No one knows where he's going to be come the start of the season. Pochettino said on the pre-season tour, after Rose was left out to pursue a move away from the club, that if Danny Rose was still at Tottenham and he returned to London after the pre-season tour of Asia, that he would have him in his plans for the start of the season. The club, I believe, have returned to London now, and of course Rose is still there. So I'm sure we'll hear over the next couple of days what the situation is with Rose. I don't think we'll hear like from Pochettino or Rose himself, but it'll be through Sky sources or something like that, if Rose has been taken off the transfer list. Ben Davies has signed a new 5-year contract with the club. That was confirmed a couple of weeks ago. But again, I don't feel like he's going to be a first choice fullback for us this season. He's a great player and he has shown a lot of quality for us, but he kind of lacks that pace that we would need in that position, with a player who's like going forward and back and forward and back, and just the whole game they're sprinting here, they're sprinting there. I don't think he has that pace. He probably has the quality, but it's that pace and maybe the fitness that he's lacking in that situation. So maybe Ryan Sessegnon is going to be our starting left back this season, and that for me again isn't very encouraging, because he's a player that has shown a lot of quality while he's at Fulham. Most of that came in the Championship, and I know when he made that step up to the Premier League, it was almost like he had moved club because of the amount of signings that Fulham made. They spent over £100 million in the window, and the three different managers they had throughout the season. Of course, they started with Slavisa Jokanovic, Claudio Ranieri was there mid-season, and they ended up getting relegated with Scott Parker. So there was a lot of changing in there, and there was never any consistency with their style of play or their form in the league. So he certainly struggled to... You can understand why he struggled to get a bit of form in there. And even where he was playing in left back sometimes, and there was other times he actually ended up playing in right wing. So you can understand why he did struggle. But I suppose if he is our starting left back for next season, we have to trust in Pochettino that he knows what is best, and just hope that it does work out, irregardless of what system we're actually only playing in the middle of the park. Jonathan Black saying, I hope Skip gets more game time. He's been brilliant pre-season. Dare I say it, he's going to be better than Eric Dyer. Yeah, I've also been really impressed with Oliver Skip in this pre-season, especially that game against Juventus. He played in there in that first half. I think it was with Harry Winks coming up against a midfield that had so much strength and quality and experience. He and Winks dominated that midfield in the first half, and he got into our team a lot last season, but it was mainly because of the lack of depth we had in midfield, and then the injuries that we picked up. Wanyama, Dyer suffering a lot of injuries, and of course Dembele leaving in January. So I think he won't get as much game time this season as he did last season, especially with those additions we've made in the middle of the park. He might get game time in the domestic cups and stuff like that, but I feel like it'll be another couple of years before we see him as a kind of mainstay in that first team. Matthew Arnold saying, do you think all signings will be on hold till Poch is back due to Levy wanting them to meet their manager? That's my theory. That could be a possibility, actually. I've never really thought of it that way. Of course, Pochettino had a major impact in the deal to bring in Dembele to the club. Dembele said himself that once he met Pochettino, he knew that's where his future was, that's where he wanted to go. So maybe that could be a reason why these moves have been on hold over the last week or two, because Pochettino, of course, has been away in Asia. And the club are leaving for Germany on Monday, so maybe we could see these deals over the next 2 days if that is the case. Joshua Humphrey is saying, Arsenal are spending 80 million on Pepe, why can't we do it with Dybala, and why aren't we doing the swap deal? If you haven't seen the news, Arsenal are close to agreeing a deal to sign Nicolas Pepe from Lille for £72 million. He's a player that United were interested in only last week, and United were actually expected to complete a deal there, but for whatever reasons that fell away. And then we heard last night that Napoli had agreed a deal to sign Pepe from Lille, but this morning Arsenal jumped in there and they've made their bid. They've agreed a £72 million fee to sign him, I think it's just personal terms that need to be sorted at the moment. But I don't think we have to worry too much about Arsenal because, like, do they really need a player in that attacking position when at the moment their main problem is they're leaking goals at the back? Like, the only addition they've made in defence this summer is William Saliba, but he's been immediately loaned back to Saint Etienne. So I don't think we have to worry too much about them in that regard, because losing Lauren Koscielny as well this summer, their defence is in a dire state. So I think they're going the wrong way about improving their team. And I know obviously I'm not in a place to be saying that, but just in my opinion, I do think they're going about it the wrong way. Why can't we do it with Dybala? I think it's because, first of all, there mightn't be the money there because of that signing we've made with Ndombele, and like if Eriksen and Alderweireld do sign new contracts, there's going to be a lot of money that'll have to be put into that as well. So I think while the £80 million might be a problem, the wage side of things could also be an issue, because at Juventus there's no doubt he's on 200, maybe £300,000 a week, and making a move he might be expected for his wage to increase or even to stay at the same level. It would be a struggle for Tottenham to do that. And also you have to wonder, is the player actually interested in the move? I know Football.London have said he is, but we never know what's going on behind the scenes. So why we're not doing the swap deal, I think it's because Juventus aren't interested in Christian Eriksen at the moment. They're more inclined to pursue Paul Pogba, and at the moment now it looks like Romelu Lukaku could even be ahead of Christian Eriksen in their transfer list right there. Ishak saying, why do you think the Lo Celso news has gone quiet? To be honest, I'm not too sure. I think it's just maybe it could be the nitty gritty side of things that need to be sorted out now with, you know, different clauses in the contracts, and maybe payment structure could be a thing. So that is one that I'm confident will happen this window. So I'm not getting too worried about that one. It just feels like it's gone on for so long now, and the progress has been made very, very slowly. So I do think this is one that could be completed, and I'm not too worried about the slow news there. Delboy saying, I agree Arsenal blowing the whole budget on attack. They already score more goals than us anyway. It's their defence. And I mean, that just is the case. I mean, you only have to look at, they had a week there towards the end of the season where they were closing in on us in the top four, and personally I was getting really worried that we'd drop out of it and they might go in and get that Champions League football ahead of us. But they played, I think it was Brighton, Leicester, it was Crystal Palace, Leicester and Wolves over a 7-day period, and they conceded 3 goals in each of those games. And while they did score 1 or 2 in those games, it's without a shadow of a doubt their defence is where they're suffering at the moment. Now, Bernd Leno, the keeper they brought in last season, has definitely helped them a lot. He's made some big contributions to the team. One of them, of course, when we were due with Arsenal at Wembley, he made a fantastic double save that effectively got Arsenal a point, even though they should have gone on to get 3 points with that penalty miss. He was really important there. But their defence, the fact that in the season coming up, their 2 starting centre-backs could be Shkodran Mustafi and Rob Holding, and then Socrates could be another player in there. They're not quality centre backs. They're not Champions League centre backs. And as I said, I'm really shocked that they actually invested £30 million in William Saliba, even though he's a great addition for the future, and he's someone that I would have liked to see at Tottenham, but not in the way that Arsenal signed him. I think it's so confusing why they would have agreed that deal to send him back to Saint Etienne for the next year. And I said it in my last live stream as well, it seems that with Arsenal, the signings that they're making, as I said, that Saliba deal, trying to bring him in for the future, and Dani Ceballos on a 1-season loan, it seems that their ambition this summer and for the upcoming season is kind of to stay at the level they're at and stop falling. Because of course there was 20 years in a row there where they got Champions League football and they missed out on it for 3 years, and it seems like they feel like they're falling and that they need to stop that. And the way they're doing that is bringing in a fantastic player in Dani Ceballos, someone who will definitely have a good contribution to their team this season, but they don't seem like they want to push on this season. If they did, they would invest in that defence, because at the end of the day, you're not going to win games if you're conceding 2, 3, 4 goals every game, and they need defenders. And I'm glad they're not getting them, of course, because it just means that they're going to be worse next season. But it's really strange with that transfer tactic they seem to have gone on. And Ryan Scott here is touching on something I was hoping to mention as well. Trippier has stated that there were behind the scenes factors that contributed to his move. What do you think that could be? I'm hoping there isn't tension between the playing group. So if you haven't heard, Trippier was asked about his move from Tottenham to Atletico Madrid, and he said there were things behind the scenes that kind of influenced his decision to leave Tottenham and ultimately join Atletico Madrid. Now, first of all, as always seems to be the case, the press have completely blown this out of proportion, and it was just a small little comment. He said there are things behind the scenes that affected his decision, but he doesn't want to get into it. And immediately the press took that and they made their headline, Trippier speaks of unrest at Tottenham. and there was nothing there, absolutely nothing that said there was an unrest in Tottenham in the dressing room or between the coach and the players or anything like that. There's so many different things that could be like. I can't think of a specific situation apart from something in the dressing room, but when you think of all the different things that go on at the club, like it could have been he might have been negotiating a new contract and he wasn't getting the money he wanted, or he wasn't getting the sort of guarantee of game time that he wanted. He could have been told that they were looking to bring in another right back, or that Sergio Aurier would be the starting right back. There's so many different things that it could be, and I don't for one second think it was unrest in the dressing room, because you can see from all the social media, the Instagram stories and the posts and the Twitter posts and everything, there's such a good bond there in that dressing room, and it seems to be between every player. There's not these different like factions of the dressing room that are friends, that are kind of friendly with each other. It seems to be the whole team have bonded so well. So I don't for a second believe there's any sort of unrest in that dressing room, and it's just the press blowing things out of proportion as usual. Jonathan Black saying, new season must be a fortress, then success will arrive as we know how to win away. And that's really true. I mean, last season our away form was absolutely amazing for the majority of the season, and even the season before when it struggled a bit at Wembley, it was our away form that did so well for us. So that is a great point, that if we can make that stadium, the new stadium, a fortress, we already seem to have found the key to success on the road. And there's no telling what we can achieve if we do that at home, because our last season at White Hart Lane, we went unbeaten in that season. In the league we won 17 games and we only drew 2, and then combined with that good away form that we seem to have found, we finished with 86 points, and I think it was something like 13 other seasons in the Premier League, that tally that we had would have been enough to win it. So we were just a bit unfortunate that season that Chelsea did so well, finished with 93 points under Antonio Conte. That was probably our best chance to win the league, and we were really unfortunate not to do it. But it's that home form that is so key to success, because you look at City last season, I think they lost one game at home, and again they won against Crystal Palace, and they won the other 18, or they might have drawn one in there somewhere. And Liverpool were unbeaten at home all season as well. So it's that home form is so key to success, and it's not just at the top of the table. Like you look at Burnley a couple of seasons ago. Now last year they were close to relegation, but the season before that they lost only 3 games at home, and their away form was really dodgy. They only picked up about 5 or 6 points on the road all season, but because of that home form they ended up in the Europa League qualifiers. And teams who are facing relegation as well, they prioritise picking up points at home, and it's such an important part of any team's success, even in the league, in domestic cups, in the Champions League, whatever it is. And that is something that we could, if we do find the key to success for that this season, we might go on and have a really successful season. Now Ben S is saying there's always going to be politics behind the scenes. If people think every club and every teammate gets along, that's just not true. In my view, there's no unrest at Spurs. Poch wouldn't have it. That's so true. Like there are players in there who seem to be a bit causing a bit of unrest in the dressing room. Like Kyle Walker would probably be the main one there. He expressed his desire to leave, and straight away Pochettino got him out. There were some comments that Pochettino made, I think being interviewed by Spanish TV, maybe the end of last season or the start of this season, and he said when a player wants to leave the club, he trusts him more than a player who wants to stay at the club. And I'm sure that has a lot of sort of conditions on it. If it's a player who comes to Pochettino and says, look, I'm interested in leaving, that would be fine. But if a player makes it known publicly or something like that, Poch wouldn't go for that. But it's a really interesting point that he trusts these players who wants to leave, because he feels like they have more ambition and they're more sort of fired up to go on and be successful. And it's a very interesting insight into his philosophy, and it's a philosophy that seems to be so detailed, and we learn these new different things about it all the time. And this is one that I think is very interesting and potentially really a good part of what he believes in at the club. So as you said, I don't think that he would take any unrest at all. And I mean, maybe that could be something that would see players moving on in the future. With this new transfer strategy, with bringing these players in, there's going to be players who've been at this team for the last 4 or 5 years, sort of since Pochettino started, that are going to lose a bit of game time. They're not going to be as important to the team as they were. And maybe that might cause a bit of unrest. Like the main one that you kind of be thinking about is Dele Alli. Because of the poor form he showed throughout his maybe the last season or two, even though we know the quality is there, he's been really inconsistent. And he's even said it himself, like he knows his performances aren't up to standard, and it's something he wants to address. But I think if we do get in someone like Paulo Dybala or Giovani Lo Celso, Ali's position could definitely be in jeopardy, and maybe that could be something that would cause him to get a bit unhappy at the club, maybe cause a bit of unrest and move on. So I think any bit of unrest, Pochettino straight away, as you said, wouldn't accept it, and he's gone. Delboy is saying there, you know how Poch is, any player that causes unrest will be out, even a key player, he wouldn't accept it. And that's so true, and it's great to have someone like that, a manager like that at the club. Jonathan Black saying, how good can Parrott become, Matt? Because if he will become a star, then don't get Dybala and stifle his development. Parrott, I think, could be maybe the next Harry Kane, to be honest, because the form that he's shown, the quality that he's showing, he's only 17, and to go into that game against Juventus, his first professional, his first start for the first team, and to show such confidence and such ability and such awareness and knowledge of the game, to be in that position against a team like Juventus, who, as I said, played such a strong team, and to that time he played in the first half, he was definitely the best player in the pitch, and he caused Juventus so many problems, and played a key part in that goal. So I think there's no telling what he can achieve. There's actually a great video on Tottenham Reese's channel, sort of montage of Parrott's best moments. So I'll link that in the description after I publish this video. And I do publish after, so go down and check that out. I'm really excited about Troy Parrott, and obviously as someone who follows Irish soccer as well, I can't wait to see him in the international setup, because we've struggled for strikers. We've had the likes of Kevin Doyle, Shane Long, but ever since Robbie Keane in the prime of his career, we haven't had many strikers who can do the job for us, and it does feel like Troy Parrott will be the next one. So he's a player I'm really, really excited about, and I can't wait to see him get into the first team. And as you said, bringing in Dybala could stifle his development, but like that was something we were kind of speaking about with the Dani Ceballos deal. Why would we bring him in on loan and send him back to Real Madrid when there could be a younger player whose development would be a bit hindered by having a temporary fix in there? But I think it would be different if we're buying a player permanently, especially at the quality that Dybala has. So I wouldn't use Parrott as a way to kind of justify not getting Dybala, but I do feel Parrott can become a really good player for us in the future, and one of the most important parts of our team moving on into the next 5, 10, 15 years. Now, Joshua Humphrey saying, you said that a player who doesn't want to be at Tottenham, Poch will kick them out. He hasn't done that with Eriksen. I didn't say a player that wants to be out, a player who causes a scene, basically, or the word we used was causes unrest in the dressing room in order to push and move through. That's something that Poch wouldn't stand for. As I said, Pochettino was doing an interview with Spanish TV earlier this summer, and he said a player who wants to leave the club and goes about it the right way, I assume he meant, is a player that he trusts more than the ones who are happy where they are, because it shows ambition, and it shows that they're not settling for what they have at the moment. They want to push on, they want to better themselves. So I think what's happening with Eriksen, if he stays at the club, will be a good thing for his relationship with Mauricio Pochettino, because it seems to have been resolved, and there was never there's never anything public that would have caused anything to go wrong there. So I think this would actually be a good thing for the relationship between Eriksen and Pochettino if he does sign that new contract, as he is expected to do. Ben Coppenhall saying, do you think this thing with Dybala and Lukaku swap could be a plot for us to pay more for him and for Inter to pay more for Lukaku, as they are in high demand? That could certainly be the case. I mean, there's, as we said, there's so much politics in this, and teams will do absolutely anything to get an extra couple of £1 million. So, I mean, I hope that is the case, because it would make us more likely to sign Dybala. But Lukaku could seem to be a player that Juventus are actually interested in, and I'm sure United would be interested in Dybala. So for me, that does seem like a deal that could go through, and it could be a potentially realistic thing. But then you also have to look at, might we be registering interest in Dybala to get a bit of money off of Giovani Lo Celso if Real Betis are, if they do need to sell? So I mean, with any deal like that, you can look into it and you can say, oh, this is to do better over here, or to do better with this deal. And as I said, with any deal you can do that. So I wouldn't read too much into it, but it is without a doubt a possibility. Trinity saying, Dybala is a world-class talent. Why do you put £45 million? As Delboy said, I don't think there is much truth to that £45 million bid, because it's the kind of tabloids that are suggesting that. There's no sort of reliable source saying that we did bid that money. Now there is some reports saying that we have actually made a bid, aside from these ones, but it's believed to be closer to the £80 million valuation that Juventus want, but obviously not at a level that they would yet accept. Matthew Arnold saying, if Eriksen was leaving, he would have stayed home with the rest. And that's true. As I said, Eriksen made that decision personally to go on the pre-season tour, and it's definitely an encouraging thing that he wanted to go with the team to Shanghai and Singapore, when he could have been at home, as a medical staff advised, trying to force a move away from the club. Jonathan Black saying, would you play Dybala if we were to get him and Kane together, or as a backup to him? And how would you fit in Son also? Not a bad problem to have, and certainly that is the best problem you could possibly have, having so many world-class players that you don't know where to fit them in. But I feel like if Dybala does come in, and just listing them out, the players that we could have in that position. Now, as I said, I don't think we will have Eriksen, Dybala and Lo Celso. Even though Sky Sports did say we were entertaining the possibility, I don't think that's realistic at all. So if we were to have, in that attacking role, we could have Son, Lucas, Lamela, Ali, Eriksen and one of Lo Celso, Dybala. And then in that attacking role, we could have Kane. I'm going to say Parrott because he looks to be showing a lot of quality, and Pochettino said he could be in the attack in the first team this season. That is such a strong lineup, and there are players as well like Sissoko that could push on into that attacking role. So it's such an exciting lineup to have, and I don't think it'll be a case where there's these four players are the priorities. They're going to start all the games, and these other ones will come in as subs or if they're injured. It's going to be a case where it would just be constant rotation, kind of like we did with the fullbacks when we had Walker and Trippier and Rose and Davis. Just constant rotation, and that would do a lot for us in terms of like fitness going into the sort of compact sections of the season. Like we're playing weekend, midweek, 3 or 4 weeks in a row. So I think it will add a lot to us in that sense. And the injuries that we suffered last season, I suppose, is because it was the same players playing week in, week out. So I think we'll reduce a lot of injuries. I think it'll just be a massive rotation system in there, and there will be no one or two players that is kind of the key and a mainstay in the team. Having said that, though, I do think if the likes of Dybala does come in, or even with Son or Lucas, we could see a lot more of the 4-1-2-1-2 system that we played against United with that diamond in midfield, because we can play two up front, and again that kind of eliminates one of the attacking players from that setup, because you'd expect to see Harry Winks at the base of the diamond and then Ndombele and Sissoko either side of him, and all of a sudden there's only room for 3 attacking players in that. But as you say, it's a great problem to have when you're trying to struggle to figure out how you're going to fit in all these world-class players into your team. So it is an exciting prospect for the season ahead. Now, Delboy saying, although you say Dybala and Lo Celso play the same position, they are different players. Dybala can play more second striker or attacking midfield, but Lo Celso is more box-to-box. And that is true, they are similar in some attributes in playing in that attacking midfield role, but in terms of diversity, they do offer different things. Like, as you said, Dybala can play as a striker, he can play as a false 9, or he can play as a number 10. He's also played a bit in wide positions before, but it wasn't really something that suited him. And Lo Celso plays an attacking midfielder, but as you said, he can also play box to box and stuff like that. So while they do in many aspects offer the same thing in terms of their diversity and stuff like that, they do offer a lot of different things. That is a very good point. Jonathan Black saying, I'm so excited to see Ndombele and Winks or Sissoko partnerships blossom, and that is something that's really exciting for the season ahead, because last season it was kind of we knew every day it was going to be Winks and Sissoko playing in the middle of the park. And for the teams that we were playing, they could sort of pick our first 11 before we stepped out onto the pitch. They knew what it was going to be because of the lack of depth we had. But with those 3 in there now, there's obviously a few different partnerships that could play there, or we could play the 3 in the diamond. So it offers us a lot of sort of ability to change and adapt to different situations in there. And for me, it kind of brings back that debate: is it better to have a system and to have a team that you can confidently put out every week expecting to win a game, or is it better to have a squad there that you can change and adapt your system depending on the team you're playing and go out and beat them? And everyone has always disagreed over which of those is better, but it does seem like Pochettino is looking towards us having a system that can adapt and change depending on the team we're playing. And it has worked in the past with that, playing the 4-2-3-1 and then switching to a 3 at the back and pushing our fullbacks on, and all these different systems we've played. That does seem to be Pochettino's preference, and these signings that we're making certainly falls into that, and will only improve what we can do in that position in terms of changing around our system and stuff like that. Trinity saying, we need to think in realistic deals. We need a centre back next season, but now we need a midfielder and back up to Kane and a right back and left back. Yeah, that's true. The centre back is, because of the Alderweireld situation at the moment, something that needs to be addressed next season, and that was something I was kind of hoping for. When this window started, really, I was hoping we keep Alderweireld, and rather than let him go for 25 million this season, we just let him go for free next season. Because although it is disappointing to lose a player of his quality and not get anything back for it, it's better for us that we focus on our fullbacks, midfield, and maybe back up to Kane this window, and then next season we can address the centre back issue, because we have 4 good first team centre backs in there right now. As I said, now Tottenham are not actually pursuing a right back, so Pochettino's happy with the choices he has there: Sergio Aurier, Juan Foyth and Kyle Walker-Peters. So we won't be signing a right back this window. Left back, it's only a matter of time before that Sessegnon deal gets over the line, I think. Midfielder, same with Lo Celso, it only feels like a matter of time. And back up to Kane, that doesn't seem like a priority. The club offered a new contract to Fernando Llorente on reduced terms, but he hasn't accepted or rejected that yet, from what we've heard, so I don't think that'll be happening. Troy Parrott is a player who could step up there if needed. I wouldn't put him in the Premier League yet, but in terms of rotating when it comes to domestic cups and stuff like that, he could be a backup to Kane. And I mean, if we are to sign Dybala, as I think it was Delaware said a few minutes ago, he is a player that could fit into the position of playing a midfielder and a backup to Kane. And of course, we can't forget Son and Lucas in there, who can play in any of those positions. So I wouldn't think that a backup to Kane is a main priority this window. But actually, there's a rumour that's kind of circulating today that we've approached Andy Carroll to sign him. He's a free agent at the moment. So just, I suppose, would you rather have no striker or Andy Carroll? And I think personally I'd choose no striker because, don't really want Andy Carroll, do we? Now Roberto saying Dyer will play centre back as backup, and yeah, that is something that he offers. While he's not the best player in our squad, he's someone who offers that sort of diversity, and if he's needed, he can play at centre back. Ishak saying the news that we will sign Sessegnon and Lo Celso this week. Yeah, that's what I think as well. Maybe if there is a few deals that Levy does want to get done that we haven't heard about over the last week of the window, it will be in his interest to get these deals that we're apparently close to do and get them done in the next week, so we can focus on those different deals coming up to the transfer deadline. Jonathan Black saying, I'm going to throw a crazy suggestion as Potter likes the plan B, big man, what about Carroll? He is mustard when fit, such a handful. And I do agree that when he is fit, he does a job. Like, he's really good in the air and he has a powerful left foot in him, but at the end of the day, he's constantly injured and he's inconsistent even when he is fit. So I don't think he'd be worth investing in, even though he is for free in terms of like signing on fees and wages and stuff like that. Personally, I don't think he is someone who'd be worth investing in, but I mean, if we do, I hope to be proven wrong. Darren saying we need signing soon, definitely, and that looks like it will be happening with these, as I said, Lo Celso and Sessegnon, and maybe a few other deals that Levy could be exploring. Matthew Arnold is saying, I think we will sign 2 before transfer deadline day, and Levy will sign 1 on transfer deadline day, because I think he's a fan too and wants us fans watching deadline day. And that is something that, maybe that's not the reason why he does it, but he has been known to make deadline day signings, and as a fan, it's agonising to watch coming up to deadline day, but then when it gets to deadline day, it's so exciting to see sort of how it progresses and trying to basically watching it get over the line. The 2 that we signed before deadline day, I agree, and I think there might be another 1 or 2 in there afterwards, because I mean, at the start of the window we were promised 7 in, 7 out. That's not going to happen, but with the few players that have left now, with Trippier, Llorente, and the few that could be leaving, like of George, Kevin and Kudu, Josh Onama, these fringe players that don't seem to be in Pochettino's plans, there could be a bit more funds recouped there and reinvested in the team. Now we have the realist saying Levy's pulling the wool over all our eyes, and Dembele was signed with the Champions League money, which means he hasn't actually spent anything of his own money. Dybala, as I predicted, will not be coming to Spurs. I mean, that is fair. Like, he hasn't spent any of his own money. It came from the Champions League prize fund. But at the end of the day, you have to realise he didn't have to reinvest that money in the squad. He could have just kept that, but he has reinvested it. And with these signings, it looks like we'll be making. I do think he is making a step forward now in terms of his transfers, and that we will see another few players. Jonathan Black saying, what is your honest prediction for next season, Matt? Another top 4 finish and an FA Cup? That's exactly what I'm expecting and hoping for in the season ahead, because I don't feel we're at the level where we can challenge Manchester City and Liverpool for the league. If we do complete that really unlikely thing of getting Eriksen, Lo Celso and Dybala into the squad, I think maybe we'll be very close to their level, and a Premier League push mightn't be out of the question. But realistically, because I don't think those players will be coming in, I think top 4 and a domestic trophy would be the ideal situation and realistic situation for us this season. Darren asking, what do you think of the Dybala situation, and if we can't get him, get Zaha instead? No, I don't think Dybala will happen. I obviously hope he do, and I don't think it's completely out of the question yet. I don't think it's something that the club will just forget about now, but I think realistically he may be more inclined to join Manchester United than us, even though he hasn't expressed an interest in that yet. I do think it will be United that he joins this summer. Jay Spurs asking, Matt, what is your predicted lineup for next season? It certainly depends on what's done in the next window, but I think our defence is pretty much set. If we're taking it as we're not going to lose any more players, it'll be obviously Neres in goal. Judging by what Pochettino has said, Aurier in right back, Alderweireld and Vertonghen in centre back. But I think Sanchez will get a lot more game time this season. He'll be rotated a lot more with Alderweireld with the future in mind, as we kind of expect Alderweireld to leave for free next summer. With the players that we have now at the moment, and let's say we bring Sessegnon in as well, I do think Rose will be the ideal starting left back. And there's kind of no saying what we're going to be doing in midfield because we have the players in there now that can change systems, as I said. I don't think we can really predict a lineup for the season ahead. It'll be more a game-by-game lineup depending on the team we're playing. So I think Ndombele, Sissoko and Winks will all get a lot of game time in there, and there'll be a lot of rotation in the front line, and then of course Harry Kane up front. But I can't really say exactly what I think the midfield will be for the season ahead because it's going to change so much. Ishak saying Tottenham pulled out of signing Ceballos because Spurs wanted him on permanent, not a loan deal, so he didn't choose Arsenal over Spurs. Also with the Saliba deal, he didn't choose Arsenal over Spurs because we didn't actually make a deal for him, and that's so true. Tottenham pulled out of both of those deals for the reasons that Ishak has outlined there. So Arsenal fans getting all excited saying they chose Arsenal over Tottenham. That's absolutely not true. Tottenham pulled out of the deals, and we never actually made a bid for Saliba. So it was Tottenham who decided not to sign them rather than the two of them deciding to join Arsenal. And that thing that we believed Tottenham had pulled out of the Ceballos deal because we wanted him on a permanent deal where they were only willing to put him out on loan. I think the fact now that Arsenal have actually paid £15 million to loan him from Real Madrid would have played a massive factor, a massive part in Tottenham pulling out of that deal as well. And it's a lot of money to get to spend on one player for a season-long loan. Delboy saying, this is my theory on Lo Celso. We're taking our time with him because the price is reducing every day we leave it longer. Levy knows that Betis can't have Lo Celso and Fekir on the wage books. And I suppose that could be true as well. At the end of the day, Levy will do absolutely anything he can and anything he needs to do to save a couple of £1 million. So that might be a thing. And as the comment a while ago that he might be waiting for them to meet Pochettino to get those deals over the line, there's a number of reasons why we could this deal mightn't have progressed just yet. Darren saying, we need to get rid of Wanyama and Kudu, Rose and maybe Dyer too. I want Parrott to be backup striker, please. Yeah, I suppose those are players that realistically could and maybe should leave the club this summer. Maybe I take Rose out of that. I think it's a strange one with him that it's kind of come out of the blue that he's going to be leaving this summer, or that he has been left out of the team to pursue a move away because he was so important to us last season, and he was a player who was probably one of our best and most consistent players. So I'm still a bit confused over that kind of situation there, but at the moment it looks like he will be staying. There's other ones you mentioned, that Wanyama and Kudu and Dyer could potentially leave the club this summer. I want Parrott to be backup striker, please. Thomas saying, who do you think will be our next signing, Lo Celso or Sessegnon? I think Sessegnon will be next because it's a sort of cheaper deal. It's with Fulham, who've been relegated to the Championship. I'm sure they know they will have to let go of Sessegnon this summer. So I think Sessegnon will be the first one to be completed. There's a question here as well about David Neres. There's a number of reports over the last day or so linking us to David Neres. He's a winger for Ajax. He played against us in the first leg, I think, of the Champions League semi-final. He was injured for the second leg. He's a great player and he's exciting for the future, but I don't for a second believe any of the reports linking us to him. Apparently we're trying to hijack, I think it's Everton's deal for him, but I don't believe Everton are in for him either because they're in talks to sign Zaha from Crystal Palace, which I'm sure will take away the majority of their transfer budget. I know they brought in quite a bit of money from selling Ademola Lookman and Idrissa Gana Gueye, but I don't think they'd have the funds to complete those two deals, and because of Zaha's Premier League experience, I think he'd be kind of the priority for them in that situation. And as for us, I certainly don't think David Neres will be joining the club this summer. I think for a deal to bring him would cost a lot of money, and I think it's kind of too late in the window now to get the ball rolling on that because of Levy's negotiating tactics and just the fact that I don't believe the rumours that are linking us to him. Joshua Humphreys is saying, in terms of the squad for the season ahead, 4-3-3, Hugo in goals, Serge, Jan, Toby and Sessegnon in defence, Winks and Ndombele, Lo Celso, and then Dybala, Kane and Son up front. And that is a really formidable lineup, but realistically I don't think that will be the case. But if it does happen, we'll certainly be challenging on all four fronts next season, because I mean that lineup of Dybala, Kane and Son will be enough to scare any team. Jonathan Black asking, it's been quiet on Van de Beek, anything? I suppose that's done at this stage. We did kind of hear that Van de Beek was interested in joining Tottenham earlier in the summer, but that one kind of quickly petered away to nothing. I'm personally surprised that he's still at Ajax. I know Bayern Munich were interested for a while as well, but I mean there's a number of players here that I'm kind of intrigued are still at Ajax, like Van de Beek and David Neres. But no, I don't think we'll be signing Van de Beek this summer. I think in that position, Dybala and Lo Celso are probably our main targets, and Van de Beek has just been forgotten about. It could be something that we might revisit in the next few years because he is a young player who has a lot of potential. But as for this window, I don't think that'll be happening. Darren asking, what do you think of the news that Fulham want Josh Onama and Nkudu? I think that's good news for us because we can get two of those players out that we don't want in return for getting Sessegnon and a bit of cash as well. But as I've said before, I think Kieran Tierney would be a better option than Ryan Sessegnon because the kind of fees that we're looking at the moment for Sessegnon would be £20 million plus Onama and Nkudu, whereas Celtic are only looking for £25 million for Kieran Tierney. And I know he's playing in a very poor league, and he's playing with Scotland, who haven't done anything internationally in the last few years. I think he's a much better player than Ryan Sessegnon, and I'm a bit not confused but intrigued as to why we're not even exploring that possibility, because it doesn't look like he will be joining Arsenal this summer. So I would like to see Tierney at the club, but it doesn't look like something that's happening. But if it is Sessegnon who comes in, I'd be happy to see Onama and Nkudu go the other way, because for them they can get that game time, and they're good players but just haven't quite made it at Tottenham. So I'd be happy for them as well to see them go and get a bit more game time, and it would reduce the fee that we need to pay for Ryan Sessegnon. Ishak saying, how much do you think we will offer for Lo Celso? As I said, I think it'll be in and around £50 million because of those clauses in the contract and Real Betis' current financial situation. They do need to sell as quickly as possible. And J Spurs saying, probably because Sessegnon is English, Tierney is not English. I suppose that could be a factor as well. We need those homegrown players in the squad. I suppose that is a great point. Maybe that's why we were looking for Sessegnon instead of Tierney. There's another one I wanted to talk about here, and that's Gareth Bale. Now look, I know he's not joining Tottenham this summer. I'm not going to say he will be. I'm not going to claim that there's a chance. But I feel like it's a story that has really interested Tottenham fans because of his history at the club. And I mean, while he was there, he was someone that we loved a lot, and we all kind of want to see this situation with him at the moment resolved in the best way possible. So it looks like he will be moving to China, which I personally am disappointed with, because he's such a great player when he stays fit and when he's in a team that, I mean, want him there, I suppose, is the main thing. Like when he played with Real Madrid, when he was on the best of his form, he was one of the best players in the world. And I think it's really disappointing the way Zinedine Zidane has kind of pushed him out of the club now. And I know he's playing a bit in their pre-season, but his representatives are in talks with Chinese side Jiangsu Suning over a contract there. He will be signing a contract worth £1 million a week, which I mean, I'm sure for him that's enough of a consolation for leaving European football. But it's disappointing to see it end this way, and I hope he gets the best for him moving into China. Just someone in here now in the chat. I just want to remove him. Del Boy saying, Eriksen must be signing a new contract now. Levy would either sell him this summer or no, he was resigning, as he would never lose him for free. And that is the case now with Christian Eriksen. Sky Sports are claiming he is going to sign that contract that we offered him, worth about £200,000 a week, putting him on parity with Harry Kane as the highest paid player at the club. So it looks like that Eriksen situation is going to be resolved before the end of the window in terms of him signing a contract. I don't know if it's a contract that will basically see him at the club for the next couple of years, or if it's one that would just bump up his value and we could sell him in January or next summer. Bailey Jones saying, do you think we should sign a new right back, or do you trust Aurier and Walker Peters to do the job? I would rather see us sign a right back personally, and I've said that a lot. I definitely think we should sign a right back, but it's not going to happen. The club are now they're not looking into signing a right back, and Pochettino is happy with the choices he has. I think Aurier would be the main choice in there, and depending on how Pochettino kind of works around the situation with Alderweireld and the centre backs he wants to develop, if it is Sanchez or if it is Foyth, I think Foyth could be maybe better in the right back position, and then Kyle Walker Peters as a third option, and he'll be there maybe for domestic cup games and stuff like that. Do I trust Aurier and Walker Peters to do the job? I don't know that I do, because of how inconsistent they've been when they've gotten in there. Aurier certainly has the talent, and he certainly has the potential to be a great player for us in that position, but it doesn't seem to be happening for him at the club, and I'd be a bit concerned going into the next season if he is or starting right back, because of the I suppose the emphasis on how much we depend on the fullbacks in our system. Delboy saying Kyle Walker Peters is not going to play, guys. It'll be Foyth and Aurier. I agree with that. I think Kyle Walker Peters is way down the pecking order, and I think maybe a loan deal would be best for him at the moment, but that isn't something Pochettino likes to do. So I think it'll be a frustrating couple of years for Kyle Walker Peters, and unfortunately we might see him leave the club in the next couple of years on a permanent deal if he doesn't get that game time. Darren saying, I feel that we need at least 3 or 4 players before the window closes. I think that's kind of the general feeling around most fans at the moment, and I would be one of them. We're in such a good position in terms of how close we are to making that step up into being one of Europe's biggest clubs, and the only thing we're missing at the moment is the squad and those big transfers. And it felt a lot like this was going to be the window where that would happen, but as more days pass, it does feel like we might just get Lo Celso and Sessegnon at one more small signing, and we're not going to have the big massive window we were I suppose kind of expecting earlier in the summer. J Spurs saying, Matt, can you explain Pochettino's playing style during pre-season, what he wants to play in the new season? I think the pre-season there was a lot of chopping and changing in there because you're trying to get as many players in as possible, and you're trying to test out a few new things. But I think with the signings that we've made, I think we'd be reverting to that kind of counter-attacking football that we saw in our last season at White Hart Lane. With the likes of Ndombele there in the middle of the park, he can make that. Sorry, another Arsenal fan in here. Banned. That kind of counter-attacking football that we played at White Hart Lane. I think that could be something that we try to be brought back in, because Ndombele, he's so good in making that that transition from defence to attack. That's one of the main features of his play. So I think we would see a lot of counter-attacking football in the season ahead. As for formation, as I said, we have the players in there now that that can make those. They can play in a load of different systems. So it's hard to pick a certain style of play or a certain formation or anything that we're going to play this season. But I do think it'll be exciting, and that we're only going to improve from last season, because the only player we've lost is Trippier, who wasn't our best player, and we're bringing in some really good players like Tanguy Ndombele. He's not a player that a lot of us had heard of maybe before last year, but he's an absolutely massive signing, and because Juventus and Man City were interested in him, the quality that he has, he has to be a great player, and I know we saw that in the game against Juventus and a bit against United as well. So I think we can't underestimate the quality of his signing, even if we don't want to make further signings. Even though I said I do feel we needed to make more, it's not a bad window if we don't. It's just not the kind of window we were expecting. Spurs 13 saying, apparently we're preparing a £54 million bid for David Neres from Ajax. As I said, I don't think that is something that will happen this summer. I think that's just rumours trying to get fans excited just to crush us as they always do. Wizard here, another Arsenal fan. Why are they all here? They're just jealous of us signing Ndombele. Darren saying, I think we should offer Rose in the Dybala deal to reduce the transfer price. What do you think? I don't think that would be a direct swap. I think it would be more of, as the reports are saying, we'd sell Rose to them for £25 million and use that to get a couple of million off the Dybala deal. But as I said, I don't think that's something that will happen. I think while it is still on the table, I don't think Dybala is likely to join Tottenham this summer, and even the odds now have him more likely to join Man United in that deal that would see Lukaku go the other way. Ishak saying, Daniel Levy said that there's no pressure to sign players. Does that mean we won't sign any more players? No, definitely not. We will sign more players this summer, and if we don't, there's going to be a lot of trouble for Daniel Levy. So when he said he doesn't feel the pressure to sign players, I think it's kind of similar to what Pochettino has been saying for the last couple of years. He's not going to sign players for the sake of signing players. He's only going to buy players that will improve the squad and will improve where the team is going. So he doesn't feel under pressure, but he is going to make those signings that he does need to make. Jonathan Black and Ben S here asking about Dele Alli. In the last few seasons he's been so inconsistent. He's been so disappointing when he has played, and this competition that we seem to be bringing in that attacking midfield role, it'll be the making of him, or it will break him, because that competition could either spur him on to become a better player and hit better form and be the player that we kind of saw in his first few seasons at the club and the player that we expect him to be, or it could be a case where he doesn't step up to the plate and he is just slowly pushed out of the club. So it's a really important couple of months, seasons ahead for Dele Alli, and obviously I hope he does make that step up. He's a player that I like a lot. He's, as I said, on his day, he's a fantastic player, and he's someone who, like, when he first came into the club, he had that kind of that attitude, that temper that he seems to have really gotten out of his game, and I'm sure Pochettino has had a lot to do with that. So you can see he's making a lot of steps in a lot of areas in terms of bettering himself as a player. But at the end of the day, the main thing is the form on the pitch. And as Jonathan Black says, he definitely has the talent, and it's just that consistency, that form that he needs to hit. And hopefully these couple of moves will kind of spur him on to becoming better at that and make him a better player. Ishak saying, I think I heard that Dybala wants to play for Tottenham, and that was Football.London is where I saw it, that Dybala has apparently said yes to this transfer, and he is definitely open to joining Tottenham this summer. This was before now these rumours about Manchester United came into the question, so I'm not sure where that stands at the moment, but it's definitely encouraging that in the first place he even not only that he considered Tottenham, but it is a deal that he was excited about and willing to do. Bailey Jones saying, I think with the arrival of Ndombele, I don't see Sissoko playing as much. I think Poch will choose Winks and Ndombele as the two main midfielders. That certainly could be the case, but as I've said, I think there'll be so much rotation in those areas. We're never going to see a player in the defensive midfield role or the attacking midfield role. I don't think we're going to see any player that is sort of the main player in there. He's the first team. He's the first choice. There's going to be so much rotation, but also, as I said, with those changing systems, we could see a diamond in midfield that would make room for Sissoko and Ndombele and Winks, depending on whatever team we're playing. So I don't think there's any player in there that will specifically suffer from these new signings that we're making. Jay Spurs saying, going back to Ali here, he's got flair but tries too much sometimes, and that is definitely a fair comment. He has of course identified himself that his performances haven't lived up to the standard that he would expect of himself, and he does seem to try almost too hard to replicate the form that he had at the start and too hard to sort of do good things. And at the end of the day, it's a very similar situation to Paul Pogba at United. He's a fantastic player, but he tries too hard. And with the two of them, when they just bring it down to the basic things and they just do what they have to do rather than trying to do a bit too much, they both become really good players. So I think if Dele Alli just settles down and he does the basics, he'll certainly be one of our best players. And before we go on any further, I just want to remind you that I am running a Facebook group at the moment. So after I publish this video, the live stream replay, I will have that linked down in the description below. I'm also doing a fantasy football league. The code is 8MTEKC. That'll be in the description as well. I'll just put it in the chat here now as well if you want to take that down. And finally, I'm doing a giveaway when I reach 1,000 subscribers. So at the moment I'm at about 880. So I'm hoping to get to 1,000 by the end of next week, maybe definitely before the season starts. So if you're not already subscribed, I do a lot of these interactive live streams. I'll be doing them most days until the end of the window, and I also do match reviews and stuff like that. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do that now. And if you also can just share out my videos and get as many people in as possible, so I can give away that jersey before the season starts. Now Ishak saying, why would Lukaku go to Juventus when it will be the same situation at Man U, because they have Rashford and Juventus have Ronaldo? Conte wants Lukaku to be the main striker. That's actually a very good point. I hadn't quite thought about that yet. Lukaku, of course, is looking for a way out of United because Solskjaer has made it clear Marcus Rashford will be his first choice striker. But I think it may be a bit different at Juventus because of Ronaldo's age, and like the players that they do have in there, their main strikers will be Cristiano Ronaldo and Mario Mandzukic, and they're both players who are well into their 30s. So Lukaku, maybe he mightn't have as much first team football or as much game time this season, but certainly if he does go to Juventus in the future, he will be their main striker. And Juventus or Inter Milan, even though Inter would give him more game time in the short term, maybe for him in terms of trophies and sort of European chances of European success, Juventus might be a better move to him. So I do think it will be one that would interest him, but as you said, I don't know what he's going to pick, so at the end of the day it is a difficult decision. Spurs 13, I can't understand why people think Arsenal are more attractive than Tottenham. I don't think that's the case at all. If you're talking about the Dani Ceballos and William Saliba moves, they're both deals that Tottenham pulled out of. The players absolutely did not choose Arsenal over Tottenham. As for Saliba, Tottenham didn't want to loan him back to Saint Etienne and never actually offered any. They never made any bid for him. It was just interest. So Saliba didn't choose Arsenal. Tottenham pulled out of the deal. And as for Dani Ceballos, Tottenham did not want to loan him for a year and send him back to Real Madrid. They wanted an option or obligation to buy, and Real Madrid and Dani Ceballos were not interested in that. They wanted a straight out loan deal to return next year. So that's why Tottenham pulled out of the deal and Arsenal then swooped in. So there's absolutely nothing to suggest that any player thinks Arsenal are more attractive than Tottenham at the moment. Just a bit of a conversation here about Dele Alli, about him playing in striker. He can't finish. He's got good technique, like the goal against Arsenal. Other than that, he's poor. I don't think he'd do well in striker. I mean, while he can score goals and he has done in the past, I think he's more effective playing in that number 10 role where he can make those late runs into the box, and that's where he strives. So I wouldn't see him up in striker, but in that kind of, as I said, the number 10 role where he's making those late runs is where I think he plays best. Jonathan Black saying Kane misses his fair share, and he does, but the thing about Harry Kane is, like his conversion rates and his shots on target rate and all that stuff. For a striker who scores as many goals as him and who is rated as high as he is, they're really poor. But the thing with him is he gets into those positions so often and he creates so many chances for himself. Not just in terms of making them himself, but getting into the right positions for other players to find him. It's just that he makes so many chances, he scores so many goals. He does miss a lot. He's definitely not the best finisher at the club. Definitely not the best finisher in the league. That's even. And Jonathan saying Son is the best finisher at the club, and I would say that is true. But Kane just gets into those situations so often that he just does score enough goals. He's not the most clinical player in terms of shot conversion rate, but he gets there so often he's just going to score goals. Bradley saying, don't forget Arsenal getting Nicolas Pepe as well. They're having a better transfer window than us. I wouldn't agree with that at all. The two players they've signed so far, William Saliba has gone back to Saint Etienne, and Dani Ceballos is only for this season. He's not a long-term solution because he's going back to Real Madrid next season. They signed a young Brazilian forward who I would doubt is going to be in around the first team. Nicolas Pepe is definitely a great signing for them. He's a really good player who interested a lot of European teams, but they're not strengthening their defence, and that is without a shadow of a doubt where they need to strengthen. Having lost Lauren Koscielny now, as I said, they're starting centre backs. Their main choices seem to be Mustafi, Holding and Socrates, which is not a strong lineup at all, and even in the full back positions they're a bit weak at the moment. So while they are making some good signings, they're absolutely not having a better window than us because they're not signing the centre backs that they need. Their defence is so weak. They're not advancing their team as much as they would want to with the money that they're looking like they will spend. Jamie Buckley saying any Dybala updates. The latest on Dybala, as I've said, any move to Tottenham would depend on the departures of Christian Eriksen and Danny Rose. Eriksen to Juventus doesn't look like it's going to happen. Any swap deal is unlikely. Danny Rose could join Juventus in a £25 million move that would see Juventus knock a bit of the price off Dybala, and we might sign him for about £70 million, but that is looking unlikely at the moment because Juventus are preparing an offer for Romelu Lukaku that would see Paulo Dybala go the other way to Manchester United, and at the moment that's looking like the most likely move for Dybala at the moment. Jay Spurs saying, Matt, do you think Kyle Walker-Peters lacks the physicality to be a right back? Still looks like an 18-year-old body. I suppose that is something that might affect him as quality and stuff. He's not the strongest of players, and I suppose he would need to be, but he does have the pace and he has shown the quality sometimes. But there's a number of different factors, not just that, why I don't think he will be our starting right back this season. Spurs 13 saying, to be honest, do you think Kane doesn't give us pace up front? Because when Kane got injured, we played Son and Mora in attacking roles and we played better. Kane is not the fastest player at all. He's more of a physical presence up there. He doesn't have much pace at all, but when we played Son and Mora in attacking roles, we played better. That depends on the team that we're playing, without a shadow of a doubt. Because if we're going out against a team like maybe in the season ahead, teams like Sheffield United or Brighton who are going to sit with 11 men behind the ball, pace does absolutely nothing for us in those areas because there's nowhere to run in behind. So it always depends on the team that we're playing, which players are going to be best for us on the pitch. And in those small games against the likes of Brighton, Sheffield United, it's players like Christian Eriksen and Harry Kane who will unlock it for us because they have the quality to in those small spaces to make the magic passes or to make those little movements to get the ball and move on and score. So I don't think we play better. We can't say we play better with Son and Lucas because, as I said, it depends on the team that we're playing against. Jamie Buckley saying, wouldn't Dybala rather play in Champions League than Europa League? And I saw a report saying Dybala prefers Spurs over United. That is something I'm interested in. Like, I don't see why Dybala, as a player of his quality, would pick Europa League over Champions League. But it does feel like instead he'd be picking Man United over Tottenham. And the report saying Dybala prefers Spurs over United, I'm not sure where that's come from. But it's going to be a difficult decision for him either way. But it may be taken out of his hands from Juventus if they prefer a move for Lukaku rather than just selling him straight out of Tottenham and maybe getting Danny Rose in return. Ultimately the decision could be taken out of his hands and it will be Juventus making that choice in the end. Josh Barkley saying, do you think we'll get Dybala? I wouldn't rule it out yet, but at the moment I don't think it's likely. I don't think we're going to sign him. I think he will end up at Manchester United or maybe a bigger European club, but personally I just don't think it's going to happen this summer, unfortunately. The realist, what do you think of signing Mitrovic? Premier League experience and was bullying defenders last season. He would be a good backup to Kane, I think, but he has just signed a new contract at Fulham, so he won't be leaving Fulham this summer. But maybe in the long term he could be a good player to bring in. Bradley saying, with the new kit deal we with the new kit deal we have, should we not have more money to spend? Just pay the 50 million plus Dan Euros to get Dybala. Now, my understanding of that deal, I don't know much about the financial side of things, but it's worth £320 million at the club, but that's 40 million every year for 8 years. So I don't think that is. I don't think we're going to have an immediate benefit from that. Now, there's another thing. The Twitter account, the EPL Lion, Tottenham Hotspur in the know. He's made a lot of good, I wouldn't say predictions, but he apparently has a source inside the club, and he's predicted the Ndombele deal with the exact amount of money. He predicted that Kiana Tete that we signed from Notts County earlier in the window, and he's been really accurate with a few of these things he said on Twitter. And he said there is a naming rights deal completed for the stadium that will be announced in October, and the deal is already done, so we might get a bit of money from that to be reinvested in this window. So if you're to believe the reports, there is a lot of money in there to be spent this transfer window. But as I said, neither Levy or Pochettino are willing to buy players just for the sake of it. They're going to buy players that improve the squad. So if we're not signing players, I will be upset, but I can completely understand it that they're not just going to go out and buy players for the sake of it, which it does seem like some of those top teams are doing. So the money could be there, but as I said, if we don't sign players, it's not the end of the world. There's going to be a reason for it, and at the end of the day, if Pochettino is happy, I'm 100% happy, because if you look at where he's brought us, we absolutely have to trust his judgment. And I mean, if he's happy, I'm going to be happy with the window no matter what happens. Bailey Jones saying, I think Llorente can do a job for another season, then spend the money on a striker next summer. And Delboy saying Llorente isn't at the club. Tottenham have apparently offered him a new 1-year contract on reduced terms. He hasn't accepted or rejected it yet, so I'm not sure where that stands. But I think he is someone. I mean, I said it from the moment the clause was missed to extend his contract by a further year. He's someone I'd love to see stay at the club, because he offers so much. Maybe not in terms of quality, but he has that presence and he has that experience and the winning mentality, and he can teach our young strikers and Kane a lot. So I'd love to see him stay at the club for another year and then potentially sign on in a coaching role or something, because he's 34, 35 now. So you'd imagine he's coming towards the end of his career. And if we can keep him at the club, I do think it'd be more beneficial in the long term getting him into a coaching role rather than him as a player next season. What about Malcolm or Dembele on loan to buy? I don't think the club are interested in them at the moment, and their future is in doubt, because they're two of the players that were included in Barcelona's offer to PSG for Neymar. I'm pretty sure that was rejected, but Barcelona, I'm sure, are going to go back and make another offer, and those players could definitely be in there. But as well, I think they'd be just way too expensive for us to buy at the moment. Ishak saying, what would you want the stadium to be called with the naming rights? To be honest, I don't really care who it is who's sponsoring the stadium, but I hope they work in White Hart Lane in there somewhere. I think the first kind of rumours were the A in the stadium is the same as the A in some of Nike stadiums around the world. I think there's one in Japan, and maybe the Allianz. No, not the Allianz. There's another one anyway that the A without the line going across the middle is the same as Nike stadiums, and because of the deal we have with them on the jersey, it could be Nike, but apparently the club are saying now the A in the stadium without the line is an arrow up in reference to North London. So to be honest, it could be anything, but at this stage I would imagine it's Nike, but I don't care what it's called as long as they somehow work White Hart Lane into that. That would be the ideal thing for us. Mikey Clark saying Wilfred Zaha to Everton after Arsenal signed Pepe, and that's looking likely at the moment. They're not players that we were in for, but it is potentially worrying to see some teams who aren't far behind us strengthening in that area with that sort of strength. Spurs 13 saying, I think we'll be real contenders for the title next season. Our form dipped when we left White Hart Lane, and if we sign a few more players, I think we will have a real chance. I don't think at the moment it's looking like we will be title contenders, but if we can get 3 or 4 more players in, quality players, there's not much to suggest that we won't be competing for that title. I think we are so far behind Man City and Liverpool, and I mean, it's nothing bad on us, it's just those two teams are the two strongest teams we've seen in the history of English football. I mean, reaching 98 and 97 points in the same season, and both of them, I think it was the last 13 or 14 game weeks, they all won their matches. So they're just so strong at the moment. I don't think it's realistic to be sort of aiming to catch them this season. But as I said, if we can get those 3 players in, Dybala, Eriksen and Lo Celso, if we can have the 3 of them at the club, I don't think we will, but that could be the key to us pushing on and potentially competing for the title this season. But I think in the long term, maybe in the next 5 years, this next 5 year project that Pochettino has at the club, Liverpool and City, they're only going to be up where they are for so long, and the level they're playing at, you would expect that to max out at 2 or 3 years, and City now have had 2 years at that level, 100 points and 98 points. And actually thinking about it, even Liverpool, the last few times they've competed for the league, under Hodgson, Rodgers, and I think they won before that, every season after that they fell away to nothing and they just struggled to get into the Europa League. I don't think it'll be the same this year, but when they get to this level, they don't seem to stay at it for very long. So I think that could be something that would encourage us a bit going forward. Sophus Arvin is saying, also, I hope we can get Tierney and see the Arsenal fans cry when he was the best left back in the league for us. Tierney is someone I'd be interested in us signing as well, but it just doesn't seem likely. Ryan Sessegnon is the main target for left back, and a deal looks really close at the moment. Bailey is saying, our issue is strength and depth. We don't have too many world-class players to bring off the bench, and that is absolutely the case, without a shadow of a doubt. Where we suffered last season in terms of eventually falling out to fourth, not doing well in the domestic cups, was our strength and depth, because without signing players last season, there was so much dependence on the players that we had, and then all these injuries that came in, it was the same players playing week in, week out, and we just struggled because we didn't have, as you said, that strength and depth. There were so many injuries, and just fitness suffered towards the end of the season. Our form dipped, and bringing in 3 or 4 players to add to that depth is the key to us progressing. Jamie Buckley saying, who starts right back for you? For me, I would ideally like a new player to come in, sign someone to win that position, but it's not going to happen according to the club. So at the moment it would have to be Serge Aurier, not because he's our best player there, but he seems to be the best option of a poor bunch. Not poor bunch as in bad players, but just they're not in the right back position. They're not at the level that the rest of the squad is at in their positions. Ishak saying, would you want us to sign Dembele from Lyon? He would be a good player. I mean, when he was playing with Celtic, he was banging in goals for fun, and people are saying, oh, it's just the Scottish league, he wouldn't do that anywhere else. He moved on to Lyon, and he's doing the exact same there. And again, I know the French league isn't the best league, but it's a big step up from the Scottish league. He's a player that I think will end up in the Premier League eventually. Man United are apparently interested in signing him as a replacement for Lukaku if he goes to Inter Milan. If he goes to Juventus, obviously they'll have Dybala in there straight away. But he's a player that has a lot of quality, and he's young. He's a big prospect for the future, and he'd be someone I'd love to see at the club, but at the moment it doesn't seem like he's a target for the club or that it will happen. Spurs 13 saying there isn't many right backs out there in the market, to be honest, and that is very true. There's no one. There are some good right backs out there, but there's no one that seems to fit into that demographic that Pochettino was looking for. And I keep coming back to it. Players under the age of 23 with first team experience is what he's looking for, and there aren't many players out there at the moment. I mean, there are a number of world class right backs, like Jonathan here saying Florenzi from Roma. There's Dani Alves. There's Joshua Kimmich from Bayern Munich. Dani Carvajal of Real Madrid, but they're not players that will join Tottenham. Ultimately, like they're likes of Florenzi, Kimmich, and Carvajal are getting first team football where they are, and Dani Alves I think is just too old to bring in. He's too much of an investment for such a short term return. So I think you're right that there aren't many right backs out there that we could sign, but I do think we should get someone in, like Hiriki Sakai from Marseille was the player that Tottenham kind of identified as a plan B, but that's over now. I think we should have brought in a right back, even if it wasn't the ideal signing. I think we should have got someone in, because that is a weak position for us at the moment. Dillboy saying, nah, the best right back for us would be Irish lad Matt Doherty, great Premier League player, proven. And he did have a great season last year, to be honest. He was one of Wolves' best players. Struggled a bit when he got into the international setup, but he was a great player for Wolves. He scored goals, he got assists, he was solid defensively. It's just not a realistic signing, to be honest, at the moment, because of his age, and he's not the biggest name in the world, and I don't think that's something Pochettino would be interested in doing. But having said that, again, if we signed him, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Jamie Buckley saying, how many players do you think will come in before the end of this transfer window? I think for definite there'll be 2, and they're Ryan Sessegnon and Giovani Lo Celso, but I think we will see one more coming in before the end of the window, and whether that's a player we've already heard of or as a transfer target, or if it's going to be a new one that will crop up in the last week or so of the window, I don't know. But I do think there'll be at least 3, maybe 4 signings before the end of the window. Now Jay Spurs saying, would you do an Eriksen Dybala swap deal plus money? It's okay to ask. I wouldn't do it Eriksen plus money. I think the ideal situation right now would be swap Eriksen and Dybala straight out. even more so than keeping Eriksen at the club. I think swapping the two of them would be the best thing for us at the moment. The clubs value them both at around £80 million, so it would be a deal that if Juventus were still interested in Eriksen, it would be a very realistic thing, but they seem to be prioritising Paul Pogba as their number one transfer target. So personally, it is definitely something I would do, but it doesn't seem like it is going to happen. Bradley saying, I have a feeling we'll sign someone big on deadline day, either Dybala or Van de Beek. If we did, it would be a surprise, to be honest, because as I just said there about Dybala, not likely, and Van de Beek, it's just kind of petered away to nothing over the last few weeks. But a big signing on deadline day isn't out of the question yet. As you said, there is a lot of money seems to be floating in and around the club, and I'm going to be doing a giveaway when I reach 1,000 subscribers. So if you can share out my videos, and we can try and get there as soon as possible. Thanks for watching.